It's here! Starting on April 4th, 2015 and stretching all the way to November 28th, Season 5 of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic has come and gone, leaving behind a whole new series of 26 episodes for us to enjoy, or to hate, but seriously, don't be that guy. It is incredible to think that our favorite show has stuck around and is still around 5 years later after its initial air date. For a show that was originally only to have 65 episodes over 3 seasons, it's nothing short of astounding that there is now a 4th, 5th, and soon-to-be 6th season of the show. But at the same time, there's a bit of a paradox here. As a brony born during the season 4 to 5 hiatus, it's quite clear to me what the problem is with season 5 and any new season of a show one truly loves. When one first watches such a show, they find something to love about it, something to celebrate, something worth remembering. And then all of a sudden, there's a new season and it can't be the exact same thing as what you loved before. Something changes, and you either must embrace that change or fall out of the fandom entirely. For those reasons, this new season's been a whole new ride for me, and I'm not quite sure if I liked every episode the first time around. But for those of you in my boat, I wouldn't worry too much about this, because as long as there is one good episode in the season, the show continues to live on. It's not a zero-sum game. The new episodes do not change how much we love the old ones, but rather they give us a chance to fall back in love with the show we love most dearly. And it is now with great pleasure that we can take a step back from it all, and for the first time, really look at what Season 5 is. So, what did we get? We got a season premiere so good that it put the last 2 season premieres to shame, followed by a response to the question we've all been asking, what's with the castle? A beyond crazy nightmare in conclusion of the CMC Dream Trilogy, an episode so heartfelt that it made you cry over a tortoise entering hibernation, the return of Appaloosa and another crusade for the CMC trying to get their marks. Soon, Sweetie Belle, soon. The episode where Discord just had to crash the greatest party in all of Equestria. The return of Gilda and a quick view of the once glorious Griffin Kingdom. An episode that everyone always wanted that somehow made it past the editing department. The Spike episode, because Spike is best dragon. And now we screw Pinky over and make her run all over Equestria. Remember, kids, all yaks are awful, destructive maniacs, and they're not content with any of the episodes this season. A throwback to the beginning of the show itself, and a celebration of the core themes that have defined it, followed by a Princess Luna episode, featuring her personal thoughts of the royal sisters split mentioned in Season 1. A rarity episode reminiscent of the classic Suited for Success, another rarity episode paired with Rainbow Dash with great humor and a charming story, and then another rarity and Applejack episode, as well as the return of Coco Pamel, a Big Mac episode with throwbacks to Season 2, a CMC musical like no other, and because the last 2 episodes were super intense, we take a break by making Pinky try to keep a secret, like forever. Pinky then returns with Applejack for a heartwarming episode about the holiday traditions. Fluttershy finally gets an episode, and she gets some awesome character development too. Discord gets to make his second entrance, and with him once again crashing the party, it is Twilight that learns her lesson this time around. And then we're off to the Smoky Mountains to watch the greatest family feud in Equestria, and with it, all the shenanigans. The show then psychs us all by presenting an episode about Applejack that is not really about Applejack at all, but her musically gifted friend. And for the finale, let's do the time warp again. And just in case you were wondering, here are some fun statistics about Season 5. Counting the number of times we got to see our protagonists featured in an episode, we find that Applejack got 3 episodes, Fluttershy got 3 episodes, Pinkie Pie got 4 episodes, Rainbow Dash got 3 episodes, Rarity got 3 episodes, Twilight Sparkle got 5 episodes, the main 6 collectively shared 4 episodes, the CMC got 4 episodes, and Spike got 1 too. If you add them all up, that gives us 30 episodes this season, minus 5 for the times we cut in an episode twice, for a grand total of 25 episodes. But that's just counting the main 6, Spike, and the CMC. If we count the episodes by major appearances of other characters, we find that Starlight Glimmer gets 4 episodes, Tank gets an episode, Troubleshoes gets an episode, Discord gets 2 episodes, Gilda gets an episode, the Yaks get an episode, Moondancer gets an episode, Princess Luna gets an episode, Sassy Saddles gets an episode, the Wonderbolts get an episode, Coco Pamel gets an episode, Big Mac gets an episode, Diamond Tiara gets an episode, Princess Cadence and Shining Armor get an episode, the Apple and Pie families get an episode, the Hooffields and McCults get an episode, Ra-Ra gets an episode, and Queen Chrysalis, King Sombra, and Lord Tirek get an episode. We also get a lot of events and holidays carried forward from previous seasons, such as Running of the Leaves, the Grand Galloping Gala, the Sisterhood Social, Hearthswarming, and Nightmare Night. We also got to see many old areas of Equestria again, including Canterlot, Manhattan, Appaloosa, Dodge Junction, and Cloudsdale. But perhaps the most interesting fact of all about Season 5 is that this is the first odd season to have a two-part finale! Jokes aside, there's indeed one thing that separates this season and all the new episodes from those of past seasons. No, it's not the new castle or the cutie map, but rather the absence of friendship letters. During the first 3 seasons, nearly every episode ended the same way, with a letter to the princess. This changed a bit in Season 4, with the letters being replaced by the journal entries, but now in Season 5, this idea of friendship letters has gone completely. This makes sense as Twilight has reached the next level of her studies, but even still, the friendship letters really defined the show up until this point, and I mean that. These letters helped make the show as good as it is. So, goodbye, friendship letters. May your heartfelt lessons always continue to inspire others. Season 5 introduces a new mechanism for the overarching story. It's not magic jewelry, nor is it a magic tree. Rather, it's a cutie map. Yeah, I'm still not quite sure what this does. As it replaces the Tree of Harmony, which in turn replaces the elements of harmony, the cutie map serves as a new way for the writers to send our protagonists all over Equestria, to spread the magic of friendship, of course. Having read literature about colonial and post-colonial times, I'm not quite sure if I like this idea. Fortunately, the writers did not turn friendship into an ideology and force it upon the natives. Rather, the main 6 are shipped off to wherever and then try to help out in whatever way makes sense. This worked really well in the cutie map. With plenty of time for the main 6 to explore the town, discover its way of life, and ultimately be confronted with the evil lurking there, it doesn't matter too much that the map is the only reason why. The main 6 are there, by one means or another, and they might as well overthrow the tyranny while they're at it. It's a good episode, as the map gave the main 6 an obstacle that couldn't be overcome by the means of magic jewelry, stones, or trees. Rather, they had to use their wits to confront Starlight Glimmer, as well as rely on help from their newly made friends. With the lost treasure of Griffinstone, the map's role is a little less arbitrary. It has sent Pinkie Pie and Rainbow Dash over to Gilda's homeland, presumably to help rebuild the town or rebuild their relationship. Neither of these conflicts are possible without the map, as Pinkie and Dash wouldn't be there otherwise, but because of the map, Pinkie Pie and Rainbow feel obliged to fulfill whatever the map wants them to do. This kind of roundabout purpose limits what can happen in the episode. It's no longer a natural adventure in Griffinstone. It's a forced mission that must be fulfilled and must be completed because the map. And when Dash and Gilda finally do warm up to each other, the map forces them to leave. Why? Why can't they just stay there a little longer and actually finish their mission? It's almost like succumbing to their glowing butts is more important than the friendship itself. I don't think this problem causes nearly as much trouble in Made in Manhattan, because as soon as they spot Coco Pamel, they're only a quick conversation away from knowing what they need to do. Rather, the issue the map causes here is one of purpose. I find myself asking the same question as Applejack here. What did the map call them there for? Fortunately, the episode answers this question. By assisting Coco, the two demonstrated to others that small contributions, really do add up to making a huge project come together. It's a sweet message, but face it, Applejack and Rarity were forced into the whole business by their glowing butts. Another curious thing to mention about this episode is that the lesson is learned not by Applejack, Rarity, or Coco, but by the community. However, since the episode focuses on AJ, Coco, and Rarity for the most screen time, the resolution and build-up don't really match up, making the episode feel weak to me. With our next entry in the Great Game of MapQuest, Twilight and Flutters get a turn. Disregarding the conflict of this episode for the moment, the role of the map here makes the most sense. Twilight's ready to do her princess duties, the map gives her and her friend a quest, and bam, they're off. With the problem in this region of the world obviously being a massive family feud, there's no question about what the two of them are to do. Let's solve the problem and then get the hell back to Spain. I mean Ponyville. What follows from here is a more lighthearted episode with a conflict similar to Over a Barrel, yet somehow lacking a real cause for conflict that most definitely was explored in the Season 1 episode. If the writers had put in a tad more thought into the cause of the conflict, this episode would have shined much brighter. Our final entry in the series is the Cutie Remark, but I don't really consider this episode to be about the map. The map itself doesn't do anything here, other than serve as a fancy-looking time machine. Other than that, this episode serves as a conclusion for the season, with the best villain reformation scene yet. It's enjoyable to see Twilight really serve as a mentor, as a princess for Starlight Glimmer, as Twilight shows her directly what the magic of friendship can do. This reformation feels natural and unrushed, even with all the time travel in the episode. And once again, the conflict isn't resolved purely with magic, making these themes of friendship really hit home. But this has nothing to do with the map. Overall, the map's role seems to have rid Celestia of her job. As we no longer need a princess of exposition, the main six are free to tackle any problem anywhere in Equestria without needing a backstory. The question you may now ask is, would the episodes be better stories if the characters intentionally went there, rather than simply be summoned at random by their glowing butts? For the season opener, the map adds an element of mystery into the adventure, which I believe makes the story better. However, for the later entries, the episodes do feel like the only reason that they're there is because of their glowing butts. In fact, in Made in Manhattan, this fact is dwelled upon so much that it's frustrating. The character's lack of purpose doesn't make any episode better, it just makes it feel more empty. Compared to last season, where the tree, the journal, and the box all added up to something, here the map doesn't really do much in terms of providing an excellent story arc. Rather, it serves as a replacement for the friendship letters, but without providing the same sense of meaning that was conveyed in those letters. It is for these reasons that I am disappointed with the map. But the rest of the season is full of episodes without the map, and here we get to see a lot of development and individual growth happen that I would have never expected. Perhaps the most striking personal growth episode within the series is Thanks for the Memories. In Season 4, Rainbow Dash had some opportunities to grow, but nothing like we've got here. Rainbow Dash proves once again that she's the loyal pony, loyal to her pet that is, but with Tank starting to hibernate, Rainbow Dash is in for a rough surprise. You've probably heard someone else talk about how this episode depicts the 5 stages of grief, so I feel no need to reiterate that point. But in addition to that, this is an episode where Rainbow Dash is forced to lose. She can't win, she can't stop Winter despite all of her efforts, and she simply has to accept defeat. It's not natural for her to do so, and this episode really takes its sweet time developing this internal conflict. How's that for character development? Rarity also gets a chance to shine this season at her new boutique in Canterlot, but when faced with the mass commercialization of her own designs, she has to decide whether or not this is what she really wanted. This episode pays tribute to Suited for Success all the way back in Season 1, and I'm quite glad we got to see the next step in Rarity's creative journey. As far as the conflict goes, this episode is solid, though I personally wish we got to see a bit more interaction in between Rarity and Sassy. By the end, not only is there not much resolution between the two of them, we may never know why they formed a partnership in the first place. Perhaps the most interesting thing about this episode is its moral, that mass production isn't always something to strive for. It's a really interesting meta-commentary on the franchise, as Hasbro itself mass-produces toys, and some might say they're TV shows. I honestly don't know how the writers got approval for such an episode, but I'm glad they did. Even though Pinkie Pie lucked out and got 2 episodes all to herself this season, I'd say she got the blunt end of the stick. Party Pooped feels more like it's about the yaks than it is about Pinkie Pie and her current effort to throw good parties. Sure, there definitely is a sense of appreciation for Pinkie here, but it's not because she literally just ran all over Equestria to plan this one party. Rather, it's because of her note-taking system? No one in the main cast really got to see her effort in this episode, so it feels like this climax just doesn't match up with what the rest of the episode was about, her struggle to make better their relationship with the yaks. And with Pinkie suddenly figuring out how to become friends with them at last second, I feel like we were robbed out of a really interesting ending. As for the other Pinkie episode, well, let's just say that the writers decided to torture her by forcing her to keep a secret for no good reason. Not only does this conflict seem unnecessary, but isn't Pinkie the one who's good at keeping secrets? Remember, green isn't your color? All hard feelings aside, this episode could have been a lot worse. If we look back to Season 2, Mystery on the Friendship Express, we see a Pinkie Pie Antics episode with a similar, shouldn't have really happened kind of conflict. By comparison, we see that Pinkie at least is in a much more realistic and natural conflict, even if it does feel unnecessary. So I think it's better than Mystery on the Friendship Express, so yay? At 21 episodes into the season, I'm glad Fluttershy, best pony, finally got an episode this season. There really was some good development and continuity here for all those who've been frustrated with Fluttershy's lack of growth during previous seasons. But if you were expecting her not to be scared at all during Nightmare Night, you're out of luck. Fluttershy's had many episodes where she's triumphed over an obstacle, only to be blocked by a similar, but not identical one, later on in the show. At the first go, Fluttershy seems to give up easily, but then she redeems herself by going, not halfway, but all out in celebrating Nightmare Night and scaring her friends. And she does it. Sure, she doesn't change nature at the end of the episode. She's not fearless, but she did conquer her own fear, and all by herself too. At this moment, Fluttershy has the potential to be anything she wants to be, but she's happy with who she is, and she doesn't mind being home for Nightmare Night. It's a sweet episode, and I know I enjoyed it. The benefit or curse of having 6 protagonists in a show is that you can have all of them be together at once, or only see one of them at a time. The question is, if we see all 6 together, Does it make sense for the episode? And if they're not, does it make sense that some are missing? This season does a pretty good job of balancing out the cast throughout its episodes. For the more adventure-oriented episodes, it makes sense that we don't see anyone other than the few ponies involved. And then for episodes in Ponyville, we see them together often, but not all at the same time. I especially thought it was clever depicting all of them celebrating Nightmare Night together as close friends would. But when watching scenes with all 6 of them together, do they all maintain their individual quirks and personalities while coming together to form a group dynamic? The one episode where we really get to see most of the cast come together for the longest is Castle Sweet Castle. Here, we get to see them come together to help Twilight with her transition into her now permanent home. My reaction to this episode is neutral. That is to say, it doesn't do anything wrong, yet it doesn't stand out either. We get a few sweet moments with the cast, plus a bulk biceps cameo, and then it's over. Apart from the conflict of decorating the castle, did the main 6 minus Twilight get along perfectly well? Do they not have small clashes of personality or anything? I feel like this episode would have been a great opportunity to explore such dynamics. As a general rule, I think that when we see the main 6 together only briefly in an episode, the writing turns out better, as the longer we see them together, the more difficult it is for the writers to create all of those subtle group dynamics. However, most episodes don't feature them all together for significant periods, so the challenge is open for all future episodes. Can the writers successfully pull off an episode where each character individually contributes to the group dynamic, allowing the group to take on a new personality of its own? I'll tell you what though, the writers this season did a fantastic job creating dynamics in between small numbers of the crew. So let us now look at this season's duos. I noticed early on in the show that my favorite episodes tended to be ones involving interactions and conflicts only between 2 of the characters, hence the name duo. These are the episodes where we get to see the development of 2 characters as their relationship, be it friendship or family, is put to the test. I wouldn't put the map episodes into this category, as in The Lost Treasure of Griffinstone, Made in Manhattan, and Hooffields and McCults, the conflict really isn't in between the 2 main 6 characters or any other 2 characters. This might be why I find them all a little disappointing, but a fact's a fact. These aren't duos, not by my definition. So, which duo is up first? Oh, my Celestia, this episode. Not only is it a duo, but it's a duo in between Twilight and her former friend and classmate, Moondancer. It's also the retelling of the first episode, but from the perspective of those Twilight left behind. It's full of nostalgia, regret, loss, and friendship, and its pace is perfection. It gives Moondancer and Twilight plenty of time for them to explore what they feel about their old relationship and how it suddenly ended. It's probably not an episode for every pony, as not every pony can relate to this conflict, but for those introverts who have social experiences similar to Moondancer's, this episode is piercing. It acknowledges that sometimes what might seem like an arbitrary action can really carry a lot of weight, and oftentimes the other person involved isn't even aware of how their actions hurt someone else. This episode really brings out the tension and feelings of such a conflict, and it resolves them beautifully. Rarity Investigates is the most lighthearted duo in the season by far. The conflict's simple. Rainbow Dash is being framed for a crime she didn't do. Yet I find it so enjoyable to watch the pair be forced to solve this mystery. The last time we had a conflict in between these 2 was Sonic Rainboom from Season 1. The roles are reversed though, and this time Rainbow's passion for the Wonderbolts and flying makes her all the more plausible as a suspect. The comedy in this episode is fantastic. From Rarity changing outfits at the drop of a hat, to Dash's obsession over broccoli, to the "I had all of my ducks in a row, except one." I couldn't stop laughing this episode, and I didn't even know that it was all a spoof of film noir. Apart from the humor, the interactions in between Rarity and Rainbow work out really well here. While Dash doesn't have the strongest skill set towards acquitting herself, Rarity does, and after she finally solves the crime, Rainbow can then save the day with her flying skills. This puts both ponies in a positive light, and without compromising their individual characters as well. But if you considered Rarity and Rainbow to be an interesting pairing this season, then wait till you watch Brotherhood Social. It's the same sibling bonding event from Season 2, but this time we get to watch the apples, but not the 2 we're thinking of. This is the first time we've seen a male pony as the main focus of an episode. It's a risky business, as we've all come to watch this show to see our favorite female characters, whoever they might be. And as one watches the episode, the risk doesn't appear to pay off at first, as it's quite painful to watch Apple Bloom and Orchard Blossom compete. When Big Mac's disguise is finally called out, thank goodness, the entire event has simply become a fiasco for our 2 characters. But then, in the very last scene, the unspoken conflict is finally spoken, and we're left crying as the 2 siblings bond at last. If it weren't for this last scene, the whole episode would have been a fiasco, but Polsky nailed the ending, and because he nailed it, this episode is one that will be treasured for a long time. And when there's one meaningful duo, there's bound to be another. Hearthbreakers happens during Hearthswarming, as first seen in Season 2, but instead of merely being a kind of Christmas pageant, it's a conflict about holidays and traditions. While the conflict is not directly in between Pinkie and Applejack, it is in between both of their families, and as they are the two trying to bring every pony together, the clash weighs most heavily on them. I really like how every pie tradition causes the tension to grow in between the two families up until Applejack decides to impose the apple traditions. While this does put Applejack in a negative light, she does redeem herself by the episode's end. On the other hand, Pinkie's family doesn't even try to understand the apple traditions, so they lose out on the great lesson that Applejack got to learn from them. Nonetheless, the moral of this episode is strong, and its humorous moments decent, making this episode another great treat. Finally, we have the main attraction as our last duo. It is similar to Amending Fences, except it is Applejack who gets to catch up with her old friend this time. Thus, we get to meet Countess Coloratura, or as AJ calls her, Rara. But just like she has two names, she also has two different personalities. One of them is as AJ describes her, easygoing and down home. The other is the spectacle pop star. My question is, why is she trying to be both? I agree by the end of the episode it's quite clear that our character is Rara, but before she's all over the place. One minute she's humble, the next she's high up and so forth. This causes the episode not to build up to a strong climax. Rara simply abandons her manager at the drop of a hat, and then nothing. Sure, there's some songs at the end, but because they happened after the fact, the internal conflict that Rara faced didn't manifest. It was just implied. This internal conflict had so much potential, but we only saw Countess Coloratura, then Rara, without the transformation in between. Aside from our beloved sextuplet and their friends, our favorite trio also got some interesting episodes this season. The first was Bloom and Gloom, and with it comes the end of the CMC Dream Trilogy. It's interesting to see Apple Bloom make the shift from worrying about never getting her cutie mark to worry about what will finally happen when she does. However, this episode does feel a little dark as we watch Apple Bloom be plagued by nightmare after nightmare. In the end, the CMC are all there for her, and it turns out they have similar fears. The ending is sweet, though Apple Bloom never does get a chance to confront her fears directly, as Sweetie Belle and Scootaloo did upon waking from their dreams. Apple Bloom simply acknowledges her fear, and that's the end of the conflict. Overall, I really like that this theme was presented when it was. It gives us viewers a chance to acknowledge and prepare for the upcoming transition as well, as the CMC can't be blank flanks forever. Or maybe they can, as in the next CMC episode, they're out once more trying to earn cutie marks by capturing criminals. While this idea is completely crazy, I'm glad that the CMC got another crusading episode. After all, the last time they actually tried various activities at random was Ponyville Confidential from Season 2. Debatably. However, this episode also features Troubleshoes, Appaloosa's most wanted criminal, and the CMC end up sharing the episode with him. This, and the fact that the conflict resolves around his destiny via cutie mark, the CMC don't get a lot of attention, really, from this episode. Rather, we spend time with Troubleshoes, like it or not, and the CMC don't really get the development that I enjoy seeing in their episodes. But then, we get to Crusaders of the Lost Mark, and guess what? The CMC get their butt tattoos. If you didn't see this coming, I honestly don't know what to say. With a season opener entirely about cutie marks, plus a transitory episode about what the marks will mean for the CMC when they get them, plus an episode where the CMC begin to help others with their cutie mark problems, not to mention the fact that MLP merch now has the phrase cutie mark magic, all adds up to the CMC getting their cutie marks this season. And if you didn't see it coming, well, I totally forgot all about it when watching this episode for the first time. And then it happened. Personally, I was holding out for a CMC two-part finale this season in which they got their marks, but hey, it still happened, didn't it? Just a bit earlier than expected. This episode resembles Magical Mystery Cure in so many ways. Not only is almost the entire episode sung, but it's also two different episodes combined into one, just like Magical Mystery Cure. In Crusaders of the Lost Mark, we start out with the fall and redemption of Diamond Tiara. This is a huge deal, as Diamond has pretty much been the worst ever since Season 1. But with some help from the CMC, as well as her own motivation, she turns it all around in just a few songs. It's kind of crazy how fast they try to pull this off, but A.K. Rogers had to, as right afterwards the CMC get their transformation sequence. So both Magical Mystery Cure and Crusaders of the Lost Mark, the protagonists help solve a friendship problem involving others, and then proceed into their magical transformations, be it cutie mark or coronation. I mention this because the same criticisms of Magical Mystery Cure apply to Crusaders of the Lost Mark. This episode's plot tries to squeeze in way too many conflicts in such a short time. In doing so, the transitions are abrupt and not easy to follow, and it relies on the musical number to carry the emotions, rather than the plot itself. The other irony is that both Twilight and the CMC didn't do much in the seasons accompanying their transformations. Twilight's greatest character growth happened in seasons 1 and 2, prior to 3, and the CMC's greatest growth likewise in season 1 through 4. These issues were very apparent to me the first time I watched this episode, and I didn't like the episode at first because of them. However, upon future viewings, I find that these reasons fall just as flat for Crusaders of the Lost Mark as they did for Magical Mystery Cure. They don't account for all that the episode did well, such as the songs, the development of Diamond TR as a character, the transformation sequence itself, and the CMC being able to keep their name as they don't end their friendship but start its next chapter. The episode is a finale as much as it is a new beginning, and that itself is an excellent way to have the CMC get their marks. This episode is an example of a great episode. That is, not an episode without flaws, but one that manages to convey a meaningful story despite them. For such a powerful moment in the show that's been awaited for 5 years, it would have been so easy for the writers to get it wrong. But they didn't. Moving on to the last of our main cast, it is now time that we look at Spike and see if he gets anything out of the ordinary this season. Spike is the only character in the series that has been alongside Twilight for the entire ride, and yet he doesn't get placed in the same kind of positions as the rest of the main 6. Sure, he gets his moments to shine and his moments to fall, but the difference is his episodes aren't usually about him succeeding. This season, we have Princess Spike. It's an interesting commentary on how power corrupts. After all, in the beginning, Spike's only motivation was to ensure that Twilight got the rest that she needed, but by the end, he was using his position primarily to gain a few luxuries. But the strange thing is, it isn't his corruption that causes him to fall. Rather, it is the misguided decisions he made prior to the corrupt ones that come back to bite him. So his speech at the end doesn't really line up with how the events actually happened. However, this doesn't take away from the rest of the episode, which was about decision-making. In any case, Spike definitely learned that he shouldn't speak for Twilight in her absence. While this is not the moral directly named in the episode, it actually fits really well for a Spike episode, as Spike has always been Twilight's #1 assistant. With Twilight being a princess now, it is only logical that at some time Spike will overstep his role by accident, and I think this episode was a fine way of doing that. It's just a shame that our little dragon suffered quite a row for only a few misguided decisions. Aside from his episode, Spike also gets to become the voice of reason a few times this season. This is the better side of Spike, and I'm glad the writers haven't forgotten about it. My favorite Spike moments that come to mind this season are his talk with Fluttershy and Scaremaster, and his interaction with Twilight in What About Discord. It is in these moments that Spike gets to say what we're all thinking, and whether or not the pony he's talking to takes it to heart, it's good to know that Spike continues to be that voice of reason. To summarize how this season went down for our cast, I'd say that Applejack got a few good episodes, Rainbow Dash got an amazing one, so did the CMC, along with a few others, Rarity got her moments to shine, Fluttershy only got one though, Twilight had quite a row of excellent episodes, Spike had an okay one, but Pinkie Pie got all the crap dumped on her. Apart from the main 6 and usual cast though, there are other characters that got significant development this season, and by other, I mean Princess Luna and Discord. That's right, for all of you die-hard Luna fans out there, Best Princess got an episode, and with it, we get to know how she's feeling about her reformation and past self. And despite her manner, she really hasn't gotten over it. This episode is another great throwback to the conflicts glanced over in Season 1. Before, we never got Luna's perspective of this huge conflict that started the whole series. Now we do, but even still, there's just one thing preventing me from going crazy about an episode like this. The resolution of the conflict is just too short. After it is revealed that Luna created the Tantabus and Twilight asks Luna to have faith in herself again, Luna goes from being 100% consumed by guilt to 0% in just 23 seconds. Why? I know Rainbow can clear the skies in 10 seconds flat, but for a 1,000-year conflict, resolving it in 23 seconds is just asinine. Could we have not allocated 60 seconds of the previous 4 minutes of action sequencing to nail this ending? Oh well. The rest of the episode was fantastic. And now for Discord. This season we got 2, and only 2, episodes featuring Discord, Best Draconequus. Knowing my own personal reactions to the episodes and looking at other fans' reactions, I believe there is some polarization happening here, i.e., one of these episodes is the best, and the other the worst. Now for the reveal. But What About Discord is fantastic. Before we begin debating, I want to direct your attention towards this poll featured on Equestria Daily, asking which Discord episode from the show is the best overall. I thought this was a silly question. Clearly, the return of Harmony collectively is the best story from the entire show. With the main six having formed their friendships throughout the entire first season, all of it is put to test in the face of a new villain, Discord. Discord is the spirit of disharmony. Every action he does is one of chaos, and through subtle manipulation, he convinces each and every one of the main six that they're better off not being friends. It is only after they've went their separate ways that Twilight rereads her friendship letters and realizes that their friendship is worth fighting for. She breaks the spell, and together they restore harmony and turn Discord back into stone. This is the ultimate story of friendship and its trials against evil. Thus, this story is Friendship is Magic, along with everything that built up to it. And so I am not surprised that it scores number 1 on the poll. What does surprise me is that number 2 is Make Friends but Keep Discord. Let's face it, Discord isn't the same as who he was in Season 2, but is he entirely reformed? Isn't he still the king of chaos, the spirit of disharmony? This episode doesn't suggest that, as he spends the entire episode passive-aggressively trying to get Fluttershy's attention. Why? I'm sure Discord from previous seasons would totally know how to subtly get rid of Treehugger. But even more, why does Discord even care to begin with? Discord to me is the kind of character who really doesn't give a crap about all this pony stuff. It makes him a great character to provide contrast in this world where every other character does care about the gala. For me, Discord as the spirit of disharmony has fundamentally different motivations and objectives by which he lives. But in this episode, he doesn't. His actions are depicted as mere jealousy, which collapses his character into one more similar to the ponies he's surrounded by. And this is why I'm saddened by this episode. For me, it takes away what made Discord such a good character, and I'd rather not see him diminished. This is why when I watched But What About Discord, I was delighted. Here we have Discord coming in to meddle with the main six, but what's his motivation? As is revealed at the end, he's pretty much there just to mess with Twilight's head. It's the same subtle manipulation that Discord has been shown in every episode aside from Make New Friends, and I love it. I enjoy how Twilight, and the audience as well, doesn't understand what's so funny about Discord's lame jokes. I like how she overreacts and tries to use science to explain what's going on. I like how she ultimately fails in the end and has to face the fact that she's probably just jealous. This episode incorporates elements from many episodes that I like across the seasons, such as Sci-Twi from Feely Pinky Keen, Super Crazed Twilight from Lesson 0, and Discord the Troll from Three's a Crowd. The only thing that I felt was missed was a quantum mechanics joke where Discord told Twilight that an event can't be the same when an observer is watching. It would have been so easy to sneak one in. Come on, writers. Ultimately, I think how much you enjoy these episodes depends on what you're looking for from Discord. Do you like Discord as a reformed villain, now earnestly trying to make friends? Or do you see him as the same old spirit of disharmony, trying to get away with whatever chaos he can? I like a little less reformed, more manipulative kind of Discord, so I favor the later episode. But if that's not your cup of tea though, and you thought that the first one was great, then let me know why. And with that said, we have now explored briefly every episode of Season 5, all save for one. Slice of Life is not a normal episode. It is episode 100, and to celebrate that achievement, the writers decided to gift to the fandom everything they've ever wanted. That is, background ponies, more background ponies, and background ponies backgrounding background ponies. If you weren't a fan of Derpy and the likes before this episode, you probably weren't a fan of this episode, and if you were, I hope you enjoyed it. After that, there's nothing sensible to say about this episode. It's just an episode where all bets of getting anything from a normal MLP episode are off. No story, no main six, no lesson, except there is a story in the madness. The main six are present, if just only for a few shots, and there actually is a lesson as delivered by Mayor Mare. I personally expected to see nothing reminiscent of the rest of the show in this episode, and yet there is some, just a little bit of it. I'd still rather see a normal episode any day of the week, however. So, was Season 5 great? Was it the best season ever, or was it one that would be best forgotten? The truth is, we can never really answer this question, as our collective opinions differ so much about these and all episodes. Sure, like I'll watch reviews online and I get a general consensus about what we think as the fandom, but then I talk to a friend about the episodes and our consensus is just the opposite. So, we'll never truly agree on an answer to this question, as one answer will make sense only to part of the crowd. This doesn't mean that our efforts to review the season are pointless, it just means that we mustn't get trapped by either condemning or celebrating the season. Instead, we must ask the question, what did we like, and how might it become even better? So, if I had the opportunity to meet the writers and make a few suggestions, these are the ones I would make. 1. Lighter tone. Many of these episodes this season really try to pack a punch. They were full of meaningful moments for our characters, and would be a surprise to no one if the audience responded by crying. Yeah, this season really tried to make us all cry. But because of all these heartfelt moments, I think we lost some of that playfulness and lighthearted fun that dominated the earlier seasons. The episodes felt so serious this season, and because of this, the funny moments are just less funny. Take a look at Pinkie Pie, for instance. As the element of laughter, it's always a joy to see her so happy, even in the worst of circumstances. But this season, we see her completely stressed out in 3 different episodes, and it kills any kind of lighthearted mood instantly. Sometimes I hear the word idyllic thrown around to describe the show, but let's face it, the episodes this season aren't idyllic. Be it nightmares, visible destruction, or character abuse, the majority of episodes just don't feel lighthearted anymore. There are a few episodes that break away, but for the most part the conflicts are serious, and not even a great joke can lighten the mood. Sure, sometimes an episode that isn't lighthearted is fine, but the show's called My Little Pony, and one of the best things about it is when the show pulls off an episode that looks lighthearted, but at the end really does pack a punch. We should be hoping for episodes that are both lighthearted and heartfelt, not one without the other. 2. Use of secondary cast. When we head off to faraway places, or when faraway places come to Ponyville, the show frequently introduces us to new characters. While it's always a treat to see an episode with another character, we mustn't forget that the show up to this point has revolved around and developed characters like the main 6 and the Cutie Mark Crusaders. It's incredibly difficult to suddenly focus the episode around a brand new character like Troubleshoes or Rara. Plus, the show's called Friendship is Magic. We're here to watch familiar characters learn and grow from each other. So instead of episodes where the main cast directly teach or help secondary characters, I'd rather see episodes where the main cast directly conflicts with secondary characters or are placed side by side with them in a way that each character can learn from the other. Just something, anything other than, "Hi, we're the main cast. Let us solve your problems for you." 3. Conflict and resolution. This is only a minor issue, as most episodes do an excellent job of this, but with some episodes, I feel like their climax could have been reached in a better way. Good stories build tension early on and continue to build it up until the climax where it is finally released, the conflict is resolved, and the episode ends shortly thereafter. Some episodes this season never really build up to somewhere other than the climax. This was kind of facilitated in Griffinstone and Manhattan Map episodes, as the characters simply wondered about what they were supposed to do for a long time. But in episodes like Party Pooped, every action Pinkie took to please the Axe didn't matter by the end, and she totally abandoned the plan for another at last minute. This doesn't allow any sort of conflict to build, and the episode suffers from it. But moving on, I think there's some celebrating to do. With so many episodes, it's hard not to find something to like among them all. And while I do wish certain episodes were handled differently, that doesn't change the fact that our writers and all the other talent have pulled off an amazing feat. We now have 26 more episodes. Congratulations to you all. But now, for some episode awards that I'd like to give out. The best stand-alone episode. Gotta go with Thanks for the Memories. The best of everything happened to make it into this episode. Clever dialogue, character development, continuity, hilarious moments, heartfelt moments, and moving conflicts. We even get a song in it, too. It's hard for an episode this far out from the beginning to bring out so much emotion without relying on prior development. Yet this one does just that, providing an amazing self-contained story. And now, for the greatest risk, greatest reward episode, goes to Brotherhood Social. For an episode about a character whose lines have consisted mainly of a yup and nope for the last 4 seasons, this episode brings to life an old character we never thought much about before. While doing such would certainly be quite tricky, Polsky nailed this episode and gave to us such a beautiful moment from the Apple family. And now, for my personal favorite, has to be Rarity Investigates. This episode is one of the few episodes that maintains a lighthearted tone while delivering a meaningful message to the audience. I enjoy this episode so much for all of Rarity's antics and its contrast with Rainbow's stress, adding up to an enjoyable story I will always love. And now, for the most powerful moment of the season. We've waited 5 years for it, and it happened! The CMC earned their cutie marks, in what was one heck of an act. It's hard to imagine a better way to see our 3 favorite fillies begin their next adventure, and this masterful moment will be one treasured for all time. And that, my fellow ponies, is Season 5. As I said earlier, any season in which there is at least one good episode is a good season, and I think all of you would agree. There was at least one good episode somewhere. Whichever one it may be will be up to the individual to decide, but once you've found your favorite episode, go right ahead and celebrate the heck out of it. And in case you are still thinking that this was the worst season ever, I'd like to share a few words with you by Maya Angelou. What you're supposed to do when you don't like a thing is change it. If you can't change it, change the way you think about it. Don't complain. So like the season for what it's worth. Continue to enjoy episodes that came before, and as always, brony on.